So what is spirituality? It's a very, very difficult thing to define. The best way that I can possibly define it is anything that is beyond the material world. That is what spirituality is. And technically, everything is spiritual because spirit is the source of the material world. And it's sort of funny that we have right now these arguments between people that are more science-based, more material-based, and the people that are more spiritual, because science itself has proven that the physical realm is less than 1% of what we actually see and can perceive in reality, and that the physical plane is really a subset of a much larger, infinite reality, which happens to also be multidimensional. And that's scientific fact. You can Google that, you can look it up and do your own research. So technically, that 99% that science cannot account for in the physical realm means that the greater aspect of our reality is actually spiritual, or of the quantum field, because the quantum field, which ultimately is consciousness, it's the nothingness, it's the emptiness, it's the energetic thing that interconnects everything in reality. But it's really important for me to say that religion is not spiritual, okay? Religion is an aspect of spiritual. It's just a way to celebrate spirituality and the higher realms, or the realms that we don't yet fully understand, that is really the greater aspect of us, of our nature. So this whole argument about spiritual versus non-spiritual and all of that sort of stuff is ridiculous. You know, just like attributing spirituality to religion is also very ridiculous. And also to say that the physical realm is all there is just as ridiculous, because we already know that that's not true scientifically. I always say, and I always laugh at the fact that people claim to be scientific, or I only follow the sciences and what can be proven and all of that, yet science keeps proving what spirituality and what ancient wisdom has been speaking and teaching for tens of thousands of years, if not millennia. So it's sort of ridiculous, you know, it's just, you're better off to be the open door and be open to all possibilities, because science still can't even explain how the pyramids were built. Science still can't explain a lot of the different aerial phenomena that has been experienced, all the unidentified flying objects. Science still can't explain hundreds of mystery illnesses that plague humanity, and they still can't cure that. Science still can't explain so many things, and science is only ever going to be able to explain everything once they incorporate the metaphysical, the non-physical aspects of reality, when they incorporate spirituality into it. Because the non-physical realms is where the real magic happens. That is our true nature. That is the greater aspect of ourselves. And just because you can't see it, and just because you can't touch it, you can't really touch the air either. You can feel it, but you can't touch it. You can't actually see the oxygen, but it's there. Does it mean that it's not real? When you close your eyes and you see something in your head, it's not your eyes that are looking at it. So where does that imagery come from? As a matter of fact, when you get meat and when you were to put it all together and try and create a human being, is it going to create life? Where does that spark of consciousness come from? I mean, there's just so many simple, basic examples that can be put on the table to just sort of say, come on. It's no different than the ridiculous argument of people thinking that we're the only beings that exist in all of creation, when there are billions of universes out there. And when you think about how big our universe is, it's ridiculous to think out of all of creation where we are the only beings that exist in the grand scheme of infinity. It's just fear, it's naivety, it's conditioning. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault that they don't believe. It's just time for people to open their eyes a little bit, especially because science backs this all now. If science didn't back it all, then I could at least say, okay, like 20, 30, 50 years ago, okay, fair enough. We had the hippie movement, all right. But this has been going on for a very long time. And we've had great, great people on this planet that have demonstrated and talked and spoken about spirituality. And it's only now that, and still to this day, that people are still arguing over all of this stuff. It sort of just seems stupid, to be quite frank and quite honest. I don't know. There's just better stuff to be discussing than who's right and who's wrong and whose God is better than whose God. In order for God to be God, there can only be one, and it's got to be the same one. So that means that everyone is arguing over the same God. All the religions are arguing over the same one God and trying to tell each other that mine is better than yours, yet you're both frickin' talking about exactly the same God. And in order for the source to be the source, there can only be one. So everybody's come from the same source. When you start thinking of things in these sort of logical ways, I mean, this is logical stuff. It's not even woo-woo stuff. It really starts poking, in my mind, a lot of holes for a lot of the ridiculous arguments out there. And the question is, what are people afraid of? What are you afraid of? What, that there's something more than you? We already know that. That's obvious. It's obvious that there's something more. And if you think that you're just going to die and become this nothingness, well, what's the point then? What's the point? What's the point of anything? Science has already said that energy just changes form, but energy never dies. It never gets extinguished. There's no such thing as an energy being destroyed. It just changes. That's it. And look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not highly educated. Most of my beliefs are all from my own personal experiences and having actually legitimately traveled the world and did training and spent time with a lot of different healers and masters and yogis and shaman and everything from the more science-based to the more spiritual-based. I've done psychedelics. I've not done psychedelics for the majority of my life, as a matter of fact. During most of my training, I didn't touch 1 ounce of any substance, not even pot or even alcohol. So you can't even pin that on me and say that I'm just all woo-woo. And I've been beamed up onto a spaceship before. I have seen aircraft. I have interacted with interdimensional beings, and they have interacted with me on all sides of the spectrum, but never evil, never bad. Well, that's not true. I did once or twice go to some groups, so-called spiritual groups, and some people there were definitely summoning spirits and summoning entities that were definitely of a lower vibration. And they tried to attack me, and they tried to get at me and all of that sort of stuff. And, just did my protections and left as soon as I could, because I didn't want to expose myself to that garbage. But when you become the open door, everything becomes possible. Not only in the physical realm, but inside of you, everything becomes possible. All of a sudden, all the things that you thought were holding you back and putting you down, or that had influence and power over you, no longer does. That's magic. That's power. Because who wants to live in a jail cell? Who wants to live in the prison of the mind and all the conditioning that you've received growing up in this world from your parents, your primary caretakers, whoever they were, society, schooling, your mentors, your friends? You're a product of all of them. Wouldn't you like to know who you truly are? Wouldn't you like to break free and realize the infinite power that lies within you? And who cares whether it's real or not? It doesn't matter. If you feel amazing and you feel fulfilled and love in your heart, and nothing can stop you from that and prevent you from having that, and you can see everything for what it really is, and you can come and live in this world from a place of authenticity, fearlessness, unconditional love, in spite of what happens around you. Does it really matter whether these spiritual concepts, which are just really ultimately concepts of unconditional love, loving oneself unconditionally, and loving everything in the world unconditionally? Because if you don't love everything in the world unconditionally, you can't love yourself unconditionally, because that would hold you back and limit and constrict you. And the more that you align with that love, you align with who you truly are, who you were born to be, and you will actually awaken the greater faculties that are available to you, where you can then drop all the garbage that's being fed to you and realize the truth from the inside out. And when you have that, there's no going back. Why would you ever want to? Now, granted, a lot of spiritual people are pretty messed up. Usually, the people that get drawn to spirituality are usually the ones that have been hurt and traumatized the most in their lives. But see, all that tells me is that all that pain and suffering and all that trauma was worth it, because it facilitates the great awakening. You see, the powers that be, the negative influences on this planet, don't realize that their negativity and their non-loving actions are actually what is causing and facilitating the great awakening. They're actually agents of good. How about that? How about looking at things from that perspective? It renders them powerless. And you know what? In worst case scenario, even if they could take this body away from me, oh well, I'll continue elsewhere. And they'll continue here in their misery, in their self-delusion of grandeur, where they need to manipulate and lie and control other people for their own benefit. And then they die after 80 to 100 years. Whoopie-doo. What do they gain? Nothing. But they'll have to come back. And they'll have to do it in a much, much more harder way next time, because water seeks its own level. When you do and choose non-love, then you lower your vibrations to do so. You become that. You are that. And then the higher vibrations are off limit. But you have to know that you have the ultimate power and the ultimate say in your life. You have to believe it. You have to feel it. You have to experience it. And that's the reason why I do the reclaiming sessions, where I help you establish the greatest connection, the greatest relationship, where you learn to foster and grow and expand and utilize the greatest relationship that you can ever have, which is your relationship with self, because you are the source of all of your experiences and how you experience those experiences, whether you experience them in a positive way or a negative way, and your ability to overcome them all comes from within you. Has nothing to do with the outer world. The outer world can help guide you, but you still have to do the work. You still have to make the choices, and you still have to enact whatever it is that you need to in order to realize your full potential on this planet. And your full potential is less about the physical material world than it is about becoming superhuman and rising above all the hoo-ha. Because as long as you're in fear, as long as you're in survival mode, as long as you're stressed out, you're controlled, you're manipulated, you're compromised, and you're disconnected. And so my only goal is to help you break free and be able to remove all that is not you, all the non-love, all the programming, all the trauma, the abuse, whatever it is that's holding you back from realizing the dizzying heights of who you are truly as a divine being incarnated on this planet. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I teach. And I teach you the tools. And it's not really that difficult, but it requires the willingness. It requires the correct framework of belief systems. And it requires consistency. And if you commit to that, then in no time, your life is going to start transforming in ways that you could not even possibly imagine. And this, your heart, is just going to get fuller and fuller, and you'll be happier, and you'll feel more empowered, and you'll start creating the miracles and the blessings. You'll start seeing the world and your life for what it truly is, and you'll be able to move through all the things that you thought were impossible. That's magic. That's true power. That's spiritual.